Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Fun School Show, where we show you ideas for creating the homeschool lifestyle that you love. Today, we're talking about raising boys to men to be successful.
Yeah, and really, we've got the three of us here. So this is my dad, Josh, and my name's Isaac, and this is Joseph. And between the three of us, we've all gone through this journey of learning and focusing on things that we're really passionate about and having success in those things. But we all learn really differently. And even more importantly, we all have very different reasons for why we learn what we do and how we learn. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And let's do it.
Was an unschooler and a fun schooler as a homeschooler, but my husband, as a teenager, was unschooling and fun schooling on the weekends, teaching himself to fly planes, play instruments, and build computers.
And I would say that kind of trickled down to the rest of us as we were growing up under you guys as parents. And I think today we really want to talk about what it looks like to raise sons for success.
So you can be men of good character and know how to make money and have good relationships.
I think what would be really fun to do is if Dad, could you share a little bit about what it was like for you growing up? Because I know you went to public school and you went on to actually go to college.
Yeah, I was interested in things despite going, a public school was so boring. I was not interested in literally anything going on there except performing arts, except the music department.
Yeah.
Everything else about public school was lame because go ahead.
And one thing though, is you started your education in Montessori school, which set you up to have much higher expectations for what education is, because Montessori really sets you up to be a curious kid who learns with imagination and to be very strong-willed and to question authority.
What was the first passion you really had?
It was airplanes.
Gotcha.
Airplanes is the first thing, because I'm not sure when it was, probably when I was 6 or 7. I mean, taking a trip, I still remember it was a Boeing 727 that we went somewhere. Maybe it was New Jersey. I'm not sure. But the point is, riding on an airplane and lifting off was the coolest thing ever. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it was right after that I would start bugging my parents to take me to the airport and just watch the planes land. And it was back before 9/11. This would have been in the late 80s when you could just walk into the terminal. You didn't have to have a ticket.
Wow.
You could just go through a regular metal detector and go walk out there. And I would just walk the terminal with Mom at Cincinnati International Airport, and super fun. So we love that.
How much of you being really fascinated by a subject and you pursuing a subject, how much of that is based, and Mom, you could probably answer this, how much is this based on a child's interest versus you raising them?
Wow. Well, for me, I saw the airplane. I said, yes, that.
And your parents empowered you to have that opportunity.
They had to end up fueling that fire, but it really was a fire in me.
Gotcha.
And it was sparked by that first experience. So your parents took you on an experience, you sparked curiosity, you got into it, and then they fed the fire.
Wow. And another part of that, this may sound really crazy. I love lights and dials. Something about in the airplane, in the cockpit, how there's 20 million lights and dials.
ADHD.
I just absolutely, I love bringing organization and knowing what it all does.
What did your parents do to essentially feed the flame?
Well, Mom brought me to the airport.
Yeah.
A number of times. And then even when I was a real young teenager, we would go to Cincinnati International Airport. And there was the tower road, the little road that went around to the backside of the airport where the control tower was. And further past the control tower, it turned into a dirt road. And I made Mom drive up this dirt road that was, you almost couldn't, it was almost impassable. And it would get to this little hill that was right where the planes were almost ready to touch down. So It was the flight path to land. And we would go, and we would sit there for hours at night. And these airplanes came in. and you could just almost look at the wheel lug nuts. It was so low.
Wow.
Just and at night you could look out and see all the runway lights in the distance and all the different colors of the different lighting systems, and it was the coolest thing ever. It's just
When did airplanes go from just being a interest and something you were really fascinated by to actually pursuing?
I was in 7th grade, and I went to my friend Ben Turney's house, and he lived a couple miles away, and he was my best friend in 7th grade. Go to his house like every day after school, and his parents just had a big library of all kinds of books. Well, one of the books was like a 1970s flight manual, private pilot manual, the manual you have to read to learn how to fly. Wow. And this was an old one. This was out of date. I didn't know that at that point. I just thought, airplane book. And it was a big, thick thing. And it was like all the cool stuff. And I'm reading it and just started devouring it really more intentionally at that point.
Did you borrow it or you just read it at
I think
his
they
house?
gave it to me. I'm pretty sure they gave it to me because I hope they gave it to me. I know I ended up with
Gonna
it.
find it in the attic
It
one
was
day.
at your house for some reason.
Yeah, that was a big thing. Also, I was just getting into computers at the time, and I got the early flight simulator where you could fly in Chicago, one of the early Microsoft flight simulators. And it was the worst graphics ever, but it was like how it actually worked. And that was really cool too.
And so what did you do after, obviously, Flight Simulator, reading books? When did it become a reality?
Well, what happened is when I was 13, my dad, and so I just have dad went to be with the Lord a number of years ago. And it's funny that early on, to fast forward to when mom and I had kids, my dad was very kind of against the way we were doing education.
Gotcha.
What's interesting is to realize later in our lives, I was actually doing what we do today in education, but he just didn't know he was doing it in quite that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you were following his example of how he taught you and inspired you to learn to become an entrepreneur and a pilot.
That's fascinating.
And so he was honest, because what we ended up doing is going all in with that method that dad was doing with me.
On the weekends and in the summers.
But it was nights and weekends where, he was still like all about the regular school and public school and university and all that and good grades and all that. And so he was really freaked out about the way we were doing things, but really it was
he was
a
the
reflection.
inspiration behind it.
It was a reflection. I mean, really separately, you were all in love with that method. And it's kind of funny. I'd be interested to hear from you the sort of push and pull of you were having these ideas and how you wanted us to school the kids. Did you look at me to come up with that?
We're both kids of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so both of our parents had the entrepreneurial mindset. And when I was looking for a husband when I was about 14, 15, I wanted somebody who actually had skills and talents and potential and wasn't waiting to grow up when they were like 25. And so I was really impressed because you were talking already about being a pilot. You were already a musician. You were already on the worship team. You were already doing cool things and you had real skills. And I was impressed by that because you were more than just an educated kid with good grades.
Right. And so you asked, well, what was next? Well, Dad, when I was 13, actually said he's going to get me flight lessons. Wow. And so he took me down to Indianapolis Metro Airport, which is on the northeast side of Indianapolis, and met with an instructor there. And I did the ground school. So I sat in the class, and it was pretty early. I was 13. I understood a lot of it, but there were some things that were scary, like reading the weather products, like reading the coded aviation weather write-ups. For some reason at that age, it was freaking me out. But then I did about 2 or 3 flight lessons. And they're in my logbook to this day. They're the first entries, like 1993 or 1992, whatever it is. And it's just your introductory flights where you go around and in a little Cessna 152, a little 2-seater. And I did those few lessons. And it was interesting that I didn't end up flying 3 times a week at that point. It was only a few introductory lessons. And to this day, I have no idea why I didn't keep going. Maybe it was just my dad's purpose to...
Supposed to be in school doing school stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, but later I was in school doing school stuff, and I flew 3 times a week or 4 times a week after that, after school.
It was great because we were dating when we were like 16, 17, and he would take me on trips, like flights to like Cincinnati to go get dinner, and we were just kids.
Yep, that's right. So after that point, I was 13, did the first couple flight lessons, didn't end up flying for a couple years then after that.
Okay.
I was still reading the books, I was still doing Flight Simulator, but it just, it felt further off that I would actually really start flying, but never stopped loving it.
So
Yeah.
why did you stop flying for those couple years?
I have no idea. My dad didn't take me over there to go flying. I was still at the point where if somebody doesn't take me to do something, maybe I'm not going to do it.
You probably
Instead.
began pursuing it again when you were 16 and you were driving.
Well, that is true. I drove myself because I got my driver's license at the absolute first day minimum age in Indiana, which at that point was 16, 1 month and 1 day. And so I got my license literally that day, got promptly pulled over on the first day. The first day. It was twilight. I was driving myself home from work. I worked at a computer software store in the mall, at Castleton Mall. And I get pulled over because I didn't have my lights on because it was so bright everywhere in Castleton, you know, all the lights of the city.
That's hilarious.
Didn't need your headlights. Well, I got pulled over. He let me go. Right after that, I did start flying 3 times a day. Interestingly,
A day or a week?
3 times a week, excuse me.
That would
3
be
times
crazy.
a week. No, it was later when I would fly 4 or 5 times a day when I was a flight instructor because I was teaching other students how to fly. My flight instructor when I was 16, who I eventually got my private license and my instrument license with, is Jack Levy. Jack Levy was one of the best flight instructors on the planet. He was a little short man, very short, older. Jack was a career flight instructor. And he didn't even need to. He just loved airplanes. He owned an airplane, but he taught at the flight school, and he was the best flight instructor. The reason he was the best is he would constantly try to derail the flight. Oh. He would constantly be distracting you on purpose to see if you tell him to shut up so that you can properly fly the plane. He would pretend to be the distracting passenger. So we'd be flying along and you know, I'm focusing on the navigation of where we are on a cross-country flight. Cross-country just means beyond 50 miles. Cross-country does not mean you're flying across the country. So we're flying along, and then he just starts saying, hey, what kind of airplane is that? Pointing at some other airliner far away. It's nothing to do with us. But, hey, what is that? What kind of plane do you think that is? It's literally on purpose.
That's awesome.
And I would say, well, not sure, but I have to focus. And, you know, I verify, hey, that plane's not a threat to us. I need to focus. And, oh, good, okay. Jack, being the instructor, would send you up. You had a choice of which examiners to go up with. So there are different examiners in the Indianapolis area that you can choose to do your check ride with. Who's the guy that tests you to actually give you your license? It's your driver's test for flying. Well, Jack would notoriously send all his students up with Robert Duncan. Well, they all called him Flunkin' Duncan because he had the highest rate of failures.
Wow.
You had to be awesome. So for my private pilot check ride, I get in the airplane. You're so nervous. 2-seat airplane. Robert Duncan shoves in here, and imagine every mafia movie with the guys with the Godfather, slick back hair with the New York accent.
No way.
I kid you not. We get out to the runway and we're ready to take off for the flight test. The first takeoff, we're at 50 feet. He pulls the engine. Now they're gonna pull the engine at some point to make sure you know what to do if you lose your engine right after takeoff. But this is the first takeoff. Pulls the engine. And I immediately start going through the procedures. He says, where are you landing? I said, straight ahead there. And I started choosing it. Oh, really? Look at that power line. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to have to avoid the power line. And he hits you hard, fast, go, go, go. No look of joy or acceptance on his face. It is completely, please, give me a break here, man. It is, so we finally get done with the check ride, and you're sweating because he just grilled you on everything you're supposed to know. And he sits there He's filling out his little paper. All right, meet me inside. You passed. I passed. I got my pilot's license. I'm 17. Wow. Because 17, you can solo at 16, but minimum age for your actual private license is 17.
Wow.
And I was like, yes, that's awesome.
And you ended up going to Embry-Riddle
Yeah.
to actually go into, like, as a career, you wanted to do flying as a
I want to
career.
fly big planes. Now, interestingly, I started out wanting to fly the biggest planes I could, 747s. Never wanted anything to do with the military. My brother did the military, and I had mild asthma too, so that disqualified me for the fighter jets and such.
Oh, wow.
For the military. And so I want to fly giant planes. Interestingly, the older I got, then into my 20s, the less I cared about how big the plane was, and I just loved flying. And it was kind of also, that was coinciding with my relationship with the Lord just growing, to where it became less and less important, like personally, to want this, but just, Lord, what do you have for my life? And so that did change things as I went along. But I flew in high school, so it was super darn cool to say to my buddy in class, hey, Mark Bricker, Russian dude in class, hey, Mark, hey, you want to fly to Cincinnati tonight in a plane? He's like, okay. And so we go down to the airport and we hop in a plane. And this is like at twilight, like this is like 5, 6 o'clock. And we hop in the airplane and we fly down to Cincinnati, which in a small plane takes about an hour. Fly down to Cincinnati, land. Then at these small airports, they will give you a free car. It's called a crew car.
No way.
And they'll just give you a car. It's a piece of junk, but it's enough to go get a bite. So we would go to Waffle House. We'd just drive to Waffle House.
You go
then
all the
we
way
drive
to Cincinnati
back
for Waffle House.
Yeah. Then we drive back to the plane, put some gas in it. Then we fly back to Indianapolis at night. And
That's awesome.
with
Wow.
Mark Bricker.
That's
And
like
it was
a
super fun.
Fun times.
It was great. That led to, then I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is kind of the Harvard of the skies, debatedly. Debatedly. Is that a word?
Arguably.
Arguably.
So you went to the
Debatedly. I like that better.
So you went to Harvard.
Yeah.
For planes. That was really fun because every class was about what I loved. Even in the required English classes, it's like you could do speech class about planes. You could do your papers that you had to write about planes, and that was really fun.
And I remember when you were in college how much you loved that all the subjects were oriented around flying and aviation. And I remember thinking that in homeschooling our kids, it would be so much easier to teach them all the subjects if they were tied into the things that they loved and they were passionate about. So when we began homeschooling you, my quest was to find out what you love and begin to give you all those things so that you could study. But what you loved kept changing.
Yeah, well, let me tell you.
Constantly.
Okay. No, I wore myself out with how much I switched what I was interested in. With the first thing, obviously, like every kid, I loved Legos, loved Bionicles. That was just like the greatest thing
If only you
ever.
kept them.
Did we ever, wasn't there a show? Was there a Bionicles movie or show?
Yeah, of course.
Did we ever watch that? Did we let you
We
watch
didn't
that?
have TV back then or movies.
We didn't do that.
I watched
I
it.
did. I would go over to Patrick's, and my best friend growing up, we'd
Yeah.
watch that. But that was the greatest thing.
I mean, I had you cleaning the whole house to pay you a dime for every chore so you could buy Bionicles.
As
when
soon
you
as
were
I
like
had
5, 6 years old.
$6, we would go to Walmart and I would get a Bionicle or a Lego set or something. Anyway, that was my first passion. During that time, though, again with my best friend growing up, we would create like little movies with our Legos and our Bionicles. That was first passion.
Here it comes.
Where I created my first email, moviemakingman@gmail.com. The emails are important because that kind of just
shows the flow.
It shows the flow. Actually, I should not be giving all my emails away in this thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't even log into that anymore. Let's see. Then we obviously that was somewhat of a childish thing. Never really grew out of it. I love Legos and Bionicles to this day. But then I got really into two things: fishing and figure skating. Really weird combination.
You even made a website about pond fishing for kids.
And I didn't make a new email for that, but I did. And
that
what I
movie-making
wanted to
man.
do, my plan was to actually create a business around fishing, creating fishing kits for specific types of fish that were in the Indiana area.
Oh, that's really smart.
Didn't follow through with that because as soon as I was
That's all
done
right.
with fishing, I was on to the next thing I was interested in, which was cooking. Go figure, just completely 180 from
After
where I
winning
was.
first place in an Indiana figure skating competition.
Yeah, what I've run into is like I get to a certain level where it's like, okay, I've done what I really like doing. I got good at it, and now I've won an award or had some sort of success in that
You
area.
got the T-shirt.
I got the T-shirt, I got the medal, and then I think, okay, what's next?
It's done. Well, and I remember I had taken you and Rachel figure skating, and it was one day when you guys were just skating, you were free skating after your lesson, and there was a guy standing there next to me, and he was watching you skate. And he introduced himself to me, and he was a Russian gold medalist,
Oh, no way.
Olympian, who was
I
going
didn't
to
know
be
this.
performing. And he said, "Do you see this boy skate?" He's like, "I wonder how long he's been skating." And I said, "That's my son. He's been skating about 10 months." He's like, "I would have thought he put on his ice skates when he was 2."
Wow.
And he's like, "He is exceptional."
Got the flow.
Yeah, and
the
so,
flow.
but then you got bored because you were
Yeah.
ready to move on to the next. Well, you always loved it, but then
I
you
do.
got into cooking.
I did, yeah.
And
Okay,
you turned
so
13.
Yeah, I was about 12 years old, and I'm trying to think of what spurred it on. I think in 2012 or 2013, Ratatouille came out, which is the greatest Disney Pixar
wow.
movie.
That is a good movie.
So good.
Yeah.
And so I just got fascinated with cooking, and I didn't even watch like cooking. Like most people get into cooking because of cooking shows, like Gordon Ramsay and like
You were
all these
really
chef
into
cooks.
knives.
I loved knives. The kitchen knives were the coolest thing.
And that was your big birthday present, and they were like $900.
Yeah, they were
No.
600 for
I
them.
spent
my
$900
goodness.
on all your stuff.
All the stuff,
Yeah.
sure, yeah. And I gotta say, that was probably your favorite thing for one of us to get into because I was making meals for everybody all the time, and it was awesome.
Can you do that again?
I can't. Well, here we'll get to continue with the story.
yeah.
We end up. You guys felt called to move to Italy and bring our whole family of 9 at the time. It was 9 kids.
8 kids
we
and one on the
birthed
way.
Birth the,
The
ninth
ninth
there.
there.
So you sold your business, which was the computer repair business, which I guess we
not
didn't get
aviation.
to that. Yeah. You sold the business, sold the house. Well, started renting
Rented
out the
the
house.
Yeah,
and we just all moved to Italy. And I was really excited to go to Italy actually because of the cooking heritage that comes out of there. It's incredible. Second only to maybe France, but even Italy just has its own really unique stuff that was fascinating to me. While we were in Italy, we were probably 5 months into our being there, I started losing my sense of smell, and it made it so that cooking was I would oversalt everything. I mean, and I didn't say anything. I didn't like,
Yeah, I had no idea.
I didn't,
Yeah, I guess we
I didn't
didn't
even realize I was losing my sense of smell until I look at it back to it later. I just thought I was like, I don't know.
And you were
But-
getting more and more and more into music and stuff.
Yes. And during our time,
And dance.
oh my goodness, I'll get there.
Wait, you had a dance
Well, he
phase?
was
You don't know
a
about my dance
figure
phase, Joe?
skating dancer, and then he no longer had the chance to
Yeah,
figure
well,
skate.
one
He
thing
kept dancing.
Dubstep.
one thing I realized when I was doing figure skating is that I had the ability to envision exactly what my body was doing at any certain moment, and I could visualize it from essentially like a third person view. Like if you're playing a video game and you're from
See
the third
yourself.
person,
An out of
I
body
could
experience.
imagine myself doing anything, and I think that's why I was really good at figure skating, is because if I watched someone do the move, I could then look at myself through my third vision and envision myself doing that move, and I could generally pull off pretty much anything that they showed me how to do. And then that later led into getting into dance and stuff like that. But that was a short-lived flame of mine.
But you were so good.
But you wanna
and
go
it
s-
was like skateboard. It was scootering.
Scootering,
Scootering.
skateboarding, but those were all little things.
Little bit
but-
of parkour.
Wait,
Okay.
you want to give
Oh,
us your
parkour.
dance A little dance recital?
I'm not even. Yeah,
get
I
up
will
and
get
give us
up.
a
I will
little-
stand on this table and dance for you, Joe. So we are, and this is when I actually really get into one of the most important things of my life, and that had to do with Dad. We moved to Italy. We're living in a house where maybe a 2-minute walk to church, the church that we're serving at for doing the mission stuff that we felt called to do. And you start getting involved in worship and sound. And you've kind of done sound at churches for as long as I can remember, and been involved with worship as well. Not something I was ever really interested in. I was definitely had a huge love for drums since I was like 2 or 3.
Since he was able to sit up on his own.
Yeah,
Like at, how old was he when
About
he was
8
doing
months
the first
and
8
on
months?
your lap. It was before we moved to Indiana from Florida.
The funniest thing is that Israel, my son, is literally the same thing. He will play drums on anything you give him. He absolutely loves it.
It's
So
so
this is
great.
really exciting.
so
I
fun.
think we're gonna have another drummer, guys. So
yeah.
excited.
3 generations of drumming.
That's so great. Anyway, so we are serving at the church. I'm just kind of losing interest in cooking because sense of smell, which actually I think it was because that plastic factory that was in Monte
hope
Belluna,
not.
that horrible smell that was out there for like the entire summer that one time. I really think that that's what it did it. And I think
really
I don't think it's
apologize.
physical. I think it was a psychological thing. I just stopped smelling that smell, and that just like
It dampened
Well,
dampened
that-
everything, and I never got it back. So
That explains a lot. You have brain damage.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm kind of lose passion with cooking, and you guys have been incredibly, I can't even say how supportive you guys have been through just every little random thing I've been into and I've probably talked about maybe 30% of all the things I've really gotten into. and
You were
been
really
passionate
into
about.
becoming an assassin at some point.
Assassin Spy.
Breaking things.
Oh my gosh, that was
Not a lot
breaking
of
things
that.
was the most fun I've ever had in my life, but I had to stop because it was really bad.
The sledgehammer.
I stole Dad's sledgehammer and destroyed the backyard.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that was terrible. And then at one point you were really into when you were like 9, the economy, and you wanted to be a
Oh, yeah.
state senator.
state senator. I was fascinated with woodworking, and I
That's
started.
right, you
I
had
started
that
a
sword
wood
business.
That's right. You had the
woodworking
sword
business, and
Yes.
I would create children's toys. I was literally a child myself. I was probably 9 or 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's right. You had the little cart you pushed around
I
Fort
had it.
Bill.
Yeah, which you guys you spent probably $250 for that
Yeah.
cart to build it.
Yeah,
It
because
was-
I didn't have any skills to do that. So we had somebody else make that.
But all that to say is you guys have just been every step of the way. You bought me. I was into jewelry making, which is so random.
Yeah.
But you bought me all the stuff for that. I
forgot.
went into
This is like going down memory lane. This
Yeah.
is really
Man.
fun.
That's right. You were doing $10 for one, but $15 for two to the
Oh, yeah.
ladies at church. You
Oh,
were
yeah.
selling jewelry at church.
I made bank at church with that.
So
I was so cute. I was probably
You were
7 years
6 or
old.
7.
I was adorable.
And the jewelry
they
was
could not
cute.
say no to me. But I just want to say thank you guys for just literally putting up with all the random stuff that I got into. Who
But I loved
What?
it. It
That's
was
so
so
fun.
fun.
What parents would buy their 7-year-old boy a jewelry making kit?
Well, I hope a lot.
Well,
I know. If we have
well, the
anything
thing
to do
is-
with it, I hope to inspire parents to do it, to buy your kids flight lessons. I mean, I know that's out of the reach.
But the
of some
thing
people.
is
It's
I
okay.
had the jewelry making stuff, and I was making jewelry, and then I left it out on the table and come back, and you'd made 20 bracelets, and you're like, I'm going to sell these at church, and you did.
Yeah. Okay. So many, many things. And one thing I want to say is if you have a child that is literally cannot stay straight on one thing, don't worry, because all those things are kind of leading up into one thing. And developing a skill like bracelet making or anything like that, bracelets were just the means.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was,
There's a bug on me.
oh my gosh, Joe, you literally don't need to have a meltdown. All right, now shush.
Terrible fear of bugs.
The bracelets were just the means. What that taught me was how to sell and how to That was like my first business, really. And it really taught me what it means to go up to somebody and say, hey, I have this thing. Would you like to buy it? And the bracelets were just the bracelets. That was just the means. I saw mom making it and I thought, oh, I can do that. And then I would sell them. Then going on to figure skating, which is I learned how to work with a coach, which was super important. Then cooking is just like following recipes. That actually taught me a lot of math. Cooking, which was really important.
Making the swords using big tools that are dangerous.
Safe. Oh my goodness. You literally I was probably 7 years old with a scroll saw in the garage upstairs
Alone.
by myself. I was making probably about 100 or so swords by myself.
Selling them for $10 each.
Yeah,
What did you do with all
ones.
that money when you were like
I spent
8 years
it on
old? Bionicles.
Legos.
And
like toy airplane. I just whatever I could find to spend. I was 7.
That's the
You
dream.
can't-
7 years old with like $1,000 in the
And you
bank.
were so cute selling your stuff.
That was my, and that never really ended.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and just to say, like, just because you have a child who cannot stay in one lane, they are learning. Oh my goodness, they are learning. I cannot say how much all these little things have taught me going into what I'm doing
huge.
now. It's super important. So
Huge.
don't be discouraged. The
That's
thing that
huge, man.
the things they're focusing on now doesn't matter. It's the skills that they're learning along the way.
And the corollary is the skill of learning.
Yes.
How to access the things you want to find out.
Yeah. So back to Italy, Montebelluna, northern Italy. We're working with this church. Dad is running sound. Now, Dad, you are also on the worship team. So you would go on worship team. You taught me how to use the soundboard. Then sometimes I would play. I think I played like cajon or drums a couple
You
times.
probably did cajon.
So we would like kind of switch off doing worship team and stuff. I would do soundboard. He would do soundboard. I would do worship. He would do worship. And we would kind of switch off. The soundboard was the coolest thing ever.
Well, soundboards are the coolest thing ever. Why? Because there's
There's lights and dials. And it was a good old, it was like the analog board. And we had a couple auxes in with,
ADHD.
sorry.
Well, and actually, with the lights and dials thing, it's probably like, there's probably an element of, see all that? You have no idea what that is.
No, it is. It's like,
You have
people
no
come up
idea
to you,
what that is.
do you know what all those do?
And I say, yes, I do. Every one of them.
Every one of them. Anyway, that's beside the point. But that was kind of my introduction into doing music in a meaningful way. Because I'd have grown up playing drums. I loved to smash around on the piano and the guitars and all that. That came really easily to me, but I never really had a purpose behind doing that. And a lot of what I do had some sort of purpose. Music never really did until I started running sound for worship. And that led me to then getting into, and you also bought an audio interface for those who don't know. An audio interface lets you connect a microphone into a computer so you can record stuff. Very important.
Ooh, big.
And
big.
Dad
And they're
bought
cheap,
one of those.
cheap now, guys.
They're so cheap.
Parents, you listening?
It's $100. You can have a full on like recording thing.
On the scale of things, I know it's $100, but versus what you can do with it.
Yeah. And I grabbed that and I stuck it on my computer. I said, Dad, I need a $30 set of software. I need to make music. And I did. I just started making music. It was absolutely terrible. Exactly. And around the same time, I was also getting into dancing, like, because with the electronic music I was making, I was always dancing, also
dubstep.
dancing too. It was electronic
This is
music
where
at the time.
Dubstep came in. Yeah.
I also was watching movies, Disney movies, just things like movies like that.
Wholesome things.
Very wholesome things. Hans Zimmer. What was it was Prince of Egypt. It was probably
Hans Zimmer.
Don't think we watched. Yes, he
Hans
did.
Zimmer did Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty crazy.
Where have you been?
I just know he did like Lion King and
This is great.
Inception and
Yeah.
Interstellar.
Anyway, we watched. I was probably 12, 13. I think I'd seen Prince of Egypt a couple times growing up, but that Prince of Egypt, the soundtrack to Prince of Egypt, clicked in my brain. It's an incredible soundtrack. It's probably one of his best.
Look it up right now, parents. Right now, look it up. Prince of Egypt, the soundtrack.
So good.
After
Enjoy it.
listening to this.
amazing.
Or just the movie.
After
watch,
this, do not cut away.
watch the movie.
And that opened my eyes to orchestral music, which I was just absolutely fascinated by. Like literally a full-on orchestra could have up to about 120 people all playing an instrument and it all sounding amazing. And it blew my mind. And I downloaded a couple of like library samples and started making orchestral music. And again, it sounded terrible, but I was hooked.
And can I interject really quick right there?
Yeah.
Just to keep it all in perspective, I also am into orchestral music. I was since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I took private lessons on drums.
Right.
I did all the bands and orchestras with percussion. I was the drummer in the show choirs and all that stuff. Super into orchestral soundtracks, Disney soundtracks, anything orchestral. Alan Menken, who wrote a lot of the Disney movies.
Yeah.
He also did, by the way, for you in Radioland, you need to look up Lincoln. It was an album for I believe it was a TV series that Alan Menken did, who wrote Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, all those things. Well, he did the soundtrack to Lincoln, and it's kind of like old colonial, but it has elements. And what I would love to do with you kids is we would listen to albums, and I would always, I torture you. I still torture everybody to this day. Is I'll say, listen to this, and we're in the car, and I keep rewinding it and saying, listen to what that instrument's doing.
Yeah.
Listen to what that flute is doing. Listen to that cool production thing. And so I kind of actually brought you guys up doing
For sure,
that.
Oh, yeah.
And then you eventually woke
But I
up
caught
to
the
it too.
bug.
Yeah, you caught it.
I
And
caught the
also
bug.
around that time, we did that episode with House Hunters International.
Yes. And this is something really interesting. So in
The
the past,
trifecta.
it's kind of the trifecta. So in the past, I would have one thing I was interested in, stop it, move to the next thing, stop it, move to the next thing, stop it to the next thing. This time, I was doing music, but then we also did
At
House
age
Hunters.
14.
14 years old. We got music, and then we did an episode of House Hunters International in Italy. And I was literally just following the sound and the film crew the entire time, drilling them with questions. And it was like, whoa, that's so cool. So it was both audio and video, both of which was just so cool to me. And that was kind of just what I started doing, and it never stopped. I got into, and it kind of I would focus a little more on video sometimes and a little bit more on music sometimes. But those two things I've just been kind of building and building and building. And now with my sister Anna, who that's a whole other story. And I think we did an episode with what she did earlier about her whole story.
We don't have time for all these stories.
Dyslexia. I know this is a long time.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
guys.
2 hours.
No, this is great. I mean, there's
It's good. It's
there's so
good.
many facets to this. Okay,
yeah. I started composing for Anna's musicals, and she has done a total of 3 musicals. I've composed for 2 of them. I've done a couple of albums of my own music.
Look up
many
Anna
singles.
Miriam Brown
Yes.
on Spotify or on Apple Music,
It's
wherever
incredible.
music is consumed.
But I remember a couple of things during this time too that were really interesting. One was you wanted all this film equipment that we didn't have money for, and you had this big list of everything you wanted. And so you knew you were going to have to make money. And so you were trying to think of how you could come up with thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. Around that time, I had published a few fun schooling journals on Amazon that were just a do-it-yourself homeschooling journal so kids could study anything they love while covering every subject. And you guys were doing it. And you said, do you think we could take this concept and turn it into a Minecraft thing? Because I think we could make a lot of money. And I said, I don't know, copyrights and stuff. And I said, well, we can contact the Minecraft company and find out if we can. And so we did, and they said yes. And so to be able to fund all the equipment you wanted, you created the first Minecraft homeschooling
The
curriculum.
first ever made Minecraft homeschool curriculum.
There were no other Minecraft workbooks out
People
there.
started doing copies after we did this one, but yeah, we had the first. It went to top 400 books on Amazon the first month. It was crazy.
The first day it launched, we made $5,000.
Yeah.
And he got half the money.
Yep.
And then he bought
He
all
still
his
gets
equipment.
half the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was able to just buy all that equipment. Around the same time, this is where, so Dad, you had your Jack Levy, what was his
Yep,
name?
Jack.
Yeah, Jack, for your flight instructor. Our longtime friend of everyone, really, all of us, Mark Apple, ended up coming to where we were at the time in Ukraine, moving over there.
Do you know the story behind that?
Do we want to get into it right
Well,
now?
it's really quick, but it's important because parents need to know this.
Okay.
We had some friends, they had been farmers, they sold their farm, and they didn't really have much going on in their life. They retired. And I had found out that he had been like on tour with Richard Marx. No, not the guy.
Richard Marx.
No, not him. No, who is the guy? God is an awesome God.
Here waiting for you.
No, not him. Our God is an awesome God.
Rich Mullins.
Rich Mullins, Amy Grant, different people. And I said, hey, I need someone to have Isaac as an apprentice to teach him music. So I'll buy your plane ticket and we'll pay
I didn't
for
know
your
you
apartment.
flew in here for that.
Yes. I said,
Wow.
if you will take Isaac as your apprentice while you're doing missionary work, we'll pay for your apartment and your plane ticket here.
Wow.
The apartment was only $125 a month in Ukraine,
Yeah.
and the plane tickets were like $1,000.
Do you know, I actually didn't know this.
Yeah, it was the deal I made because Isaac wanted to get into music
Forgot.
production
Okay.
and wanted to learn piano,
Yeah,
and Mark
I
and
have
Nora
slept
didn't
since
have
then.
anything to do with their lives, and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to throw this out there. And
Wow,
they said
that's
yes.
So cool. That's so.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they did.
So you had Jack. Mark Apple ended up flying over here, and I had gotten to the point where I needed to learn a melodic instrument because most of my production music production that I was trying to do revolved around
Rhythm.
percussion and rhythm, and then I was using samples and whatever I could figure out. But I knew, like in my mind, I was like, I need to learn piano. And so Mark flew. He played piano in church for many, many years. And was also touring with a couple
How
of
long was
big
he
artists.
in Ukraine?
1
Is this-
year.
Is this in Ukraine? Mm-hmm. And he was there for a year?
Yeah.
I just remember putting him in a chokehold and getting in trouble.
Wow, you were a spunky little one, Joe.
6 years old.
We'll get to Joe in a few
Yeah,
minutes
all
here. But so what Mark did for me was he was the exact opposite of Jack and your other dude that did your
Flunkin' Duncan.
Flunkin' Duncan. He was the exact opposite because that was what I needed. He would let me figure things out. He would just kind of stand back, and if I had questions, he'd answer the questions. But I was very much a self-taught person in pretty much every single thing that I did. And so he just paved the way, and I would figure things he would show me a way, and I would stop him and was like, wait, we could do it this way. And I would do it my own way. And it helped. And he would guide me through that, and I was a little bit bullheaded about it, like trying to make things happen my way. And he was like super chill, and he was the best teacher that I could have had, and I was super thankful for that. And so that helped me learn piano. And but that was like that was my Jack, and he was really instrumental in that. And we also got into some really unique music. Like we would listen to music a lot, and like we would just like analyze what they're doing and what they're talking about, and it was really important.
That's huge, man. That's huge.
I bring Mark up because a lot of times kids can only get so far on their own, and if you because I was into music for 5 years at that point, about 4 years. I was really wanting to do production and stuff for like 4 years, and Mom and Dad definitely saw like, oh, okay, there's something there. It's kind of like this is the longest I'd ever stuck with one thing. And so if it gets to that point and like you feel like your child has maybe hit a wall in what they can learn, getting them lessons with the right person
Yeah,
is really
one-on-one,
Or an internship.
apprenticeship.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I keep
Yeah.
saying huge.
But
And,
the
yeah.
one thing is you just kept tinkering, never actually doing anything with it. You were just playing around.
True.
Around the same time, Anna was starting to write songs. And so I said to you guys, all right, you guys produce a song together where you make the music and Anna sings, and I will give you each $100 when you publish it online.
Publicly.
Yep.
Publicly. And so you guys
So
were
we
highly
did.
motivated, and you did it.
Yep, we did. It was terrible, but it was a huge moment for us because that was the first time I've ever done anything with the vocals.
Is it still online?
No.
Because I would like to.
That,
hear
anybody
I bet
hears
it's
that,
there somewhere.
it is the end of my. Actually, I'm gonna do a YouTube video, which is what I'm getting up. Looking at my old music because that would be hilarious.
Also, do check in with Isaac's channel.
Well, I'm getting there. Because video, I was also doing like documentaries and stuff at
Yeah,
that
your
exact
senior
same time.
project was the
I
documentaries.
was doing documentaries with my friend Andrew throughout Europe and Ukraine at the time. And so like this music and this video was just kind of like going on its own separate paths. Then I just started combining it. I started a YouTube channel where I could use the skills that I had in video, use the skills I had in music, and combine that. We're at like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 million views now on the channel over the last year. And we're just it's really cool. We've recorded, performed multiple musicals. We've done, we have quite a few albums, like concept albums with the musicals. And I was able to bring so much of what I had grown up doing and in various different ways. And it all led up into these two things that I've been focusing on for the past 10 years or so. And so that is my story. That's the reason why I do things. And
it is really fun to revisit that. And, what's unique is, we've got parents listening in lots of different stages of this, right? You're 25, married, one baby, and wonderful little Israel, the cutest thing I've
8
ever
months
seen.
old.
He's just
so
8 months
cute.
old.
He's
So
just
fun.
so cute.
But we're able to get feedback now from all the things that led up to this, and then you're able to communicate, hey, this is what mattered.
Yeah.
And so I even look forward to doing more of this because I think it would help parents because they can pick up on decisions that were made all along the way and encouragements or other aspects to that can make a real big difference for parents now.
Yeah.
And then we can also look at someone who's at half that journey sitting next to you.
And I want to bring Joe into this conversation.
Yeah.
Joe came along 10 years after Isaac.
That's right.
There was Isaac, and then we had 6 girls in a row.
Yeah.
And then we had Joe. Now, when Joseph was
There's a joke
5
there.
years old, he was a math kid. And here's what happened. I ordered a bundle of schoolwork. This was before we were making our own curriculum for Joseph for kindergarten. And I ordered a bundle of schoolwork for Isaac.
And I don't even remember
so
this.
I'm sitting on my bed in Croatia, and I have Joe's pile of books and Isaac's pile of books. And I said, Joe, you're going to start school. Come look at your books. He picks up the books. He looks at him. He's like, I don't want this baby stuff. And he chucked it off the bed. And then he goes over to Isaac's box and he's like, ooh, this looks good. And he opens up Isaac's science book and it's all about, it had microbiology and it also had astronomy.
And like I learned all about like atoms and like all
my
those kinds of
gosh,
things.
I
would
remember
like
your
You were how old?
biology.
How old?
He was 5.
so
Science
I would
days.
Five.
sit
He
around.
said he wanted to do Isaac's school.
Yeah.
So
and
I
not
would
his.
sit
Which was
around.
great because I could just let him
All
do
right,
my
what's the
school.
perspective?
and it was-
Joe's going to talk.
I would sit around for hours and I would have like a book or something and it would have like all the elements and I could like look at the atoms like for each element and everything. And I would sit around and I would just draw atoms.
He was
just
5
all
years
the
old.
time. I don't even remember. It was like either the neutrons, the electrons, and the protons, and I'd
Yeah.
like learn how much of each one was in each atom, and I would draw them all. And I would do that for hours.
And then you had a really big moment. You were studying microbiology and you were studying atoms and electrons. And then you got a hold of a book that showed the solar system and you came to me.
Oh,
And you're
yes.
like-
Here it is.
Solar systems are the same thing as atoms. Do you think that there are people living on the electrons going around the nucleus? Like you were like thinking,
said that?
he was wondering if atoms were actually tiny solar systems and what lives on those tiny solar systems. And you
That's
just
really
had,
deep, Joe.
Wait, and each
And you
solar
were
system
drawing
is an atom,
pictures.
and the entire universe is made up of a bunch of solar system atoms.
Right, so you were drawing pictures of atoms and solar systems and the robots living on the
remember my
electrons.
robots.
And it was crazy, but
Wow.
So
That's so
at
cool,
the
Joe.
time, I just had you do schoolwork with Isaac, and you were looking at his books and copying everything out of his books. And we thought you were going to be this math and science kid because when you were 6, you were selling math problems using a scientific calculator
I would sell
to
math
people at church.
problems?
Yes. You
That's
would-
not as bright as the bracelets.
Okay. So
it's pretty
one
bright.
day I couldn't find you. And you were 6 years old, and then I did find you, and you were underneath the table, under the tablecloth with a scientific calculator, and you had a bunch of index cards, and you were writing out really complex math problems because you would write a number on the.
I remember this just
You would
faintly.
write a
I was
number
like
on the
under
computer.
a tablecloth somewhere.
You would write the number on the calculator, then you would write it on the index card, then you would write the symbol like plus, minus, divide, and then you would put that on the index card,
I do
and you would
some
do this
crazy
long
number?
chain of numbers. Then you would put the equal sign, and then you would put the answer on the back. And then you were trying to sell these flashcards to people at church. And I remember being on a train, and you wanted to know what all the different things on your scientific calculator meant. You wanted to understand square root and pi.
I have, this is like a core memory of mine that isn't really a core memory because I haven't thought about it for years.
It is a core memory.
But I
It made you
remember,
who you are.
I remember sitting on the train and the day that I learned about squared and cubed.
Yep.
And then that was just my life from then on.
So then,
Core gift of Joe.
So here's the funny thing: we always had a real struggle in our family that nobody was good at math.
Yeah.
And so people,
Still do.
people at church would come up to our kids like, "Oh, you're homeschooled. What's 7 times 9?"
Ooh, this is
So
good to get into, guys.
Here's something that happened.
This is for you.
Joe was 6 years old. I had taught him how to use a scientific calculator, and I had taught him the order of operations. And so that his math problems would make sense. He started making joke math problems. That was really funny. He would write this big, long math problems with parentheses and exponents and pi, and he would throw in there a times 0. And so he had his little cards, and so a person came along, was a missionary visiting Ukraine, and they're like, "Oh, you're homeschooled? What's 9 times 9?" He's like, "Why are you asking me the easy stuff, 9 times 9? And he's like, "Why don't you tell me the square root of 752,049? In fact, try to figure out this math problem." and so he made a joke math problem for them on the whiteboard at church in the classroom, made this 6, 7 years old, and he throws a times 0 in there, and I'm watching this guy like try to figure out
Muscle through it.
this big math problem, and then he sees the times 0 and he just starts laughing. And then the rumor went around the church never to ask my kids a math problem again.
By the way, for all of you out there in Radio Land, if it's times 0, that means it's 0.
no matter what the math problem.
matter what the math
And
problem.
sometimes I would throw in a twist. So if, for example, your math problem is like 14.5 squared times whatever, blah, 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 all this stuff, and then you get to the 0, but you want to trick them. So you do 0 squared. And then they don't even notice the 0. Because 0 squared is still 0.
And so I had always imagined that Joe was going to be the mathematician, astronaut, scientist.
Yeah.
But what happened, Joe?
So really a pretty like opposite thing. So it wasn't like I kind of moved into something similar. I went straight from like doing math to gymnastics. So after we moved to Hawaii from Ukraine, I would sit around on mom's computer and I would watch Olympics, just all the gymnastics for hours. I watched the 2016 Olympics. I'd watch the 2014 Olympics. I watched the 2008 Olympics or 2010 Olympics or whatever. And I would just watch them for hours, like all of them. And then that really got me into gymnastics. I would just watch like random YouTubers as well. And I would just learn flips. I started we got a trampoline and I wanted to do flips on that. So I started watching YouTube videos.
So scary.
Yeah,
Wait a minute,
at first,
but you're not into gymnastics anymore.
I know.
So
we're gonna-
gymnastics got you out of math and science, but now you're a musician.
Well, we'll get into that. So, and Dad, being the wonderful, supportive dad that he is, got me gymnastics lessons, and I liked flips. I already knew how to do flips on trampoline, and I could do all kinds of stuff like that. But I was there with a bunch of other kids who were doing back bends and cartwheels.
Boring stuff.
And boring stuff.
Step by step.
Just like 2 + 2 and 4 + 4. And I didn't, I wanted to do square roots and all kinds of things like that. I wanted to do flips. And so I had this wonderful teacher who was an 11-time national gymnast. He would give me little private lessons just for free after the group lesson, and we would do whatever I wanted. And he would be like, "So what do you want to do?" And he'd take me to the trampoline or on the floor or wherever I wanted to go, and he would just teach me whatever I wanted to learn. And that was that's really something that I love about learning. Even just the way we learn now is it's not like we have a specific thing we have to do.
Oh my goodness, it's not structured.
Yeah.
What you need to learn is not structured.
Yes.
And
It's
Right.
not okay, you learned a back bend, now you can do a back handspring. It's obviously I'm not going to do a back handspring if I don't know how to do a back bend, right? But it's not like I have to learn this thing before this thing and then this thing after this thing at this time and then that time, and it takes 20 years to
Right.
learn how to do whatever.
Something about you, Joe, is you never want to do the easy stuff. You never want to do the beginner stuff. You never want to do the step by step. You want to do the hard stuff as quickly as possible. You love challenging yourself, and you love doing stuff that's beyond your level because you love showing other people what you can do. So you're super motivated to get to a really high level as quickly as possible in everything you do. And I've seen you do that over and over and over in your life. And now you have an incredible gift in music and piano and in worship leading.
So how did
that happen?
Well, from doing gymnastics, I loved with that the same kind of thing, not structured, which is kind of similar to what music is. It's not structured unless you're in a band, of course, or an orchestra. And that's also what I did with scootering, which I did that. It's not these are the rules. It's just you can do whatever you want. And that was the way I was with music. And especially since I wasn't even reading music, I would just play whatever I wanted.
And if I remember correctly, you would choose the most impressive things you could possibly do to show everyone how impressive you were at piano.
Yeah, you were 10 years old and you were playing Lion King and Kung Fu Panda, and it was absolutely beautiful and people couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And you'd only been playing piano for 3 months.
Yeah.
And you were
arpeggios in the key of C.
Yeah.
And what's even better, which is actually kind of impressive still, sometimes I'd be able to play the arpeggio while implementing the melody into it. So that was actually kind of impressive.
So recently
Looking
you
back.
had a pretty big success story.
Well, yes. So going into music, which my sister Anna taught me just basic things on piano. I just went really into that, learning all kinds of stuff, doing music production. Then I got into other instruments, started doing drums, percussion and stuff like that. I got into worship. So I went to this camp at Brandywine Church in Greenfield just a few years ago.
Brandywine.
Brandywine.
That's
Two
a
alcohols
Brandywine
in
Church.
one.
Yes,
that
I
was
know.
around
That was
the
crazy.
time that you really came to know God and gave him your life too,
Yes,
right?
it
And
was.
then you got into worship.
Yes, and that was really at that camp that I really had that moment, and I started
So
really
special.
loving to worship, and from that, of course, music is a big part of worship, and so I started doing that with music. And my youth pastor, Clarence, who is the best, he heard me singing one time, and he was like, "Boy, why aren't you on the worship team? That was a terrible impression. And I was
That was
like,
perfect.
or he was like, why aren't you singing? And so I was like, I mean, I don't really sing. And he was like, yes, you do. And so I started singing on the worship team and just started really doing worship leading as well. That just really just opened up to a lot of different things. And I'm in multiple worship bands right now. And I just did a competition called Fine Arts competition. So it's a national competition. Every state has it except Alaska and Hawaii, of course, right? Just like everything, Chick-fil-A and all. And so it's every state has it, and a bunch of people do it.
Like a couple thousand people?
Yeah, a couple thousand people probably per state. And there are different things, of course. There's like the piano solo, worship leading solo, comedy, all kinds of different things.
There's like lots of different things.
There's preaching. There's
sermon. Preaching.
Really?
Which,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There was this 5-year-old there who won the preaching.
No way.
And it was the best sermon I ever heard. Had everyone in tears.
No.
It was amazing. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And so
you won, or
And
you
I-
at least were like at
so
the
I
top.
so I got nominated to go to nationals, the next level, in both the things I did. So I
That's
got
the
third.
level, isn't it?
And
There's
you were
not
competing
worldwide.
against
Well, yeah.
hundreds of people? Is that what you said?
Well,
yeah.
in your class, in your thing,
Yeah, there
was it like
it was a
large
worship
group of people?
worship solo is one of the most popular ones, so that was a bigger group of people. And so I moved up, scoring a 39 out of 40 in both of my things, which I was pretty surprised. And
That's great. Proud of you.
And
That's
so
great.
I'm going to that in August, and I'm just doing a lot with worship. Yeah.
And also I don't mean to bring this, but this is a generational talk we're having too, right?
Yes.
Well, I was into music, and I was
Yeah.
into worship on drums and then
Guitar.
acoustic guitar leading worship.
Eventually singing?
And one of the things that we did as parents was that we always had worship going around the house.
Yeah.
That I would put you guys to bed
Yeah.
singing worship songs on the guitar.
One of my earliest memories was me in the crib, and Mom would sing 2 songs. One
Yes.
was Jesus Draw Me Close, and the other one was The Battle Belongs to
To the Lord.
And so she would sing, Jesus draw me close.
It would put you to sleep real
and
fast.
I would be sitting there and be like, so boring, so slow. And then she would sing, the battle belongs to the Lord. And then I was there and I was like, yes, this is so cool. It's great.
You're like
And
1 year
so
old.
we all these kind of things, we were plowing music into all the kids really growing up. And so that's one reason.
One thought I have is, and that is the reason, why do we do what we do? Because for me, it was the pursuit of success and accomplishment. Like the reason for me doing things is I just like to accomplish
You're
things.
very self-motivated.
Yeah. And then I guess for Joe, it's to just everybody to think he's amazing and incredible.
He loves entertaining people.
Entertaining
He's an
people.
entertainer.
My question is, why do you do what you do?
Wow. Well, I love to give people experiences for their sake, for them to experience something.
Yeah.
So like if I'm running sound and I'm running sound for thousands of people, I love to make it awesome because I want to experience that moment to be awesome. And I know I can share that and make it awesome for thousands of people.
Is it the same with airplanes as well?
Oh yeah.
Sailing, airplanes.
I like, because I sail. I love transporting people.
Yeah.
Really, I guess you can say transporting them in an experience.
Yeah.
Or transporting them in reality,
You
whether
would
it's
be a
aviation.
great tour guide.
Yes, I would be a great tour guide.
The funniest thing you've ever said, Dad, is and this boggles my mind, is we're driving and you're like, my favorite thing in the world is just driving a fully loaded vehicle. It's like, what?
Yes.
Yeah, just to be absolutely
It's
loaded
so
to the
cool.
max is to drive. That's just the
And to
greatest
do
thing.
a great job at it and to do it successfully. And
Like,
not
who says
really
that?
Not really for the attaboys from other people.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, that's nice. but I want the experience to be amazing, and I want to give people an awesome
And
experience.
it's almost like you almost see it through their eyes and hear it through their ears, and you want it to be good.
Yeah.
With me, I love creating environments for people.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. Like just to create a space where people can thrive, where people can be creative, where they can build relationships.
Do you do
where
it
they
almost
can
like an
have
experiment,
community.
like you're watching like an ant farm or something? Like all the people
Maybe
are like
so.
doing the little things
It's the ant
that
farm.
you've set them
I
up
love
to do, and
creating
it's like
our hobby farm, and then watching all the homeschool kids come and do the stuff, building the fun school barn, helping create this like artist studio in here.
yeah.
I just love creating environments for people. So
And-
environments, experiences, self-satisfaction.
Experience, accomplishment.
Accomplishment, yeah.
You're
Personal
driven by a
accomplishment.
personal accomplishment.
Personal accomplishment.
And you are driven to entertain and get attention.
And really,
We need all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And really, like, you making environments is really giving people the environment to like achieve all those things, like to
Yeah.
achieve accomplishment and to get attention.
Well, and I just do like to interject because I'm sure other people pick up on this listening that
Everyone
entertainment
hates
and
me.
worship. No, entertainment. You have to be careful that as a worship leader that we're wanting to bring people to God, and so we don't want to get in the way of that. Now we need to do it with excellence, and we need to do it demonstrating worship, but not for the sake of people looking at how great we are.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Joseph does a really good job bringing attention to the Lord and giving God
Yeah.
attention in
Yeah.
Oh
his
yeah,
worship.
but it's a hard issue that
Yeah.
you can appear even to do
Yeah.
that, and it's a heart that we always have. This is my dad mode to
Yeah.
just make sure.
You know, one thing about our family, a lot of our kids are into music and the arts and things that we've invested in them. And I've always kind of felt like we're kind of a arts, music, travel kind of family.
That's true.
But you may not be a art, music, travel kind of family. You
Yeah.
might be a sporty family. You might be a businessy family, and your kids are given to you and put into your family because that's where they belong. And so don't feel bad if you're not an art and music travel family. Maybe your kids are designed to do something else. But I think God puts every kid into the family environment where they belong so they can thrive and become who they were meant to be.
And I do want to say that like the goal of this podcast and this show and the whole concept of the fun school, like this is all about focusing on your kids' passions and letting them do what God has created them to do. And it could be something completely uncreative, like I guess mathematics and like something that takes a lot of technical skill. Mowing lawns. It could be anything, and it's really just about
Painting
letting your
houses.
child and giving them what they need to accomplish the things that they really are interested in and passionate about.
When you're educating your kids and raising them to pursue their passions, you also have to be teaching them that they need to learn to serve people through their gifts, through their passions, through their talents.
Yeah.
Because to actually earn a living, you're not going to make money just off you doing your passion. You need to connect with people, and you need to do what you do to be able to give them something that they need or to solve their problem or entertain them.
Yeah, well, actually, that is a great segue into this question that we have from one of the Fun School Facebook group moms who wrote in. She said that her oldest is 18 years old and he should be graduating this year. They don't feel like he's ready, but he has a passion for Legos. And that is interesting because that's something I absolutely love. But he is trying to do a Lego business. And currently they are trying a bunch of different ways to make money using Legos. And they've started a YouTube channel. The question is, how do we start a business? What can we do to move forward with our son's passion for Legos? With the caveat, he also has high functioning autism. And so one thing that you really got to focus on, and especially I think with the autism part of that, is to make money on something like YouTube or Legos or something like that. You got to focus on the people. And one thing I'll say real quick is just for you, who's the mom here and the son who's working through this, is you can make money on YouTube. You can absolutely make money on YouTube, but you have to focus on YouTube as a business and not so much on the Lego. The Legos are the means to the channel, but what's going to make it successful is your skill with presenting those things to an audience. So being really entertaining, being informative, and actually bringing value to the audience. Because you could be obsessed with Legos all you want. You could sit here and talk about it, and this is like your favorite thing in the world. But if you can't portray your excitement to the audience and portray why they should be watching this, then it won't really work. And maybe that's what you're running into, is that, like you say, you have only 100 subscribers and not a lot of people are watching it. I would encourage you, learn YouTube, not just Lego. Learn YouTube, because that is a whole platform and there's a huge opportunity there. And this is my wheelhouse. I've been doing YouTube fairly heavily for the past year or so. We're at like almost 30,000 subscribers and almost 5 million views on the channel. And I've really learned a lot doing this, but it's not about my passion. It's not really about what I like doing. It's how I can essentially convey that to the audience, and that's really important. Mom, you could probably shed a little bit more light onto someone with high functioning autism.
Yeah, I really struggled with a lot of symptoms of high functioning autism, especially as a kid. And I wanted to earn money. And a friend of ours had said, well, you would probably be good at acting and modeling because you're very photogenic. And that kind of like made me nervous. But then they said, he's like, well, I know this agency and you can get acting lessons and you'll be earning like $60 an hour. Like, ooh, $60 an hour. And so I went ahead and I took acting classes. And it helped me so much with all the struggles with the high functioning autism, because I didn't naturally know how to interact well with people. And I was terrified of making eye contact. I didn't want to look at people. I didn't want to talk to people. And taking those acting classes really helped me to get over it, so that I could learn to walk into a room, make eye contact with someone, have a conversation, shake their hand, and even have the correct facial expressions to go along with what I was talking about. And that really helped me. So when working with someone who wants to have a YouTube channel and wants to have a business is customer service. And when you are doing customer service, you need to interact with the customers. So I would think, how are you going to help him improve his people skills? And maybe taking an acting class may be an option, but there's even acting classes and lessons on YouTube, and maybe start there. Yeah. So work on customer service and interaction with people. Another thing is I started reading books on leadership, personality, how to win friends and influence people. And I really loved reading books by John C. Maxwell, because it taught me how to think, how to act, how to talk, how to be a leader, how to be a friend, and how to be an influencer. Because people skills don't come naturally to me. I had to learn them, just like math, science, and spelling. Since it didn't come naturally, I had to make a real big effort. I had to get interested in people.
The people skills come naturally to Joe.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Do they? I remember when I was like 6, just looking back, that was terrible. I would run around screaming everywhere.
Oh, people loved you.
Joe
People
had to wear a helmet on a daily basis because he was so crazy.
He was wild.
I would hit my head on both sides of a hallway.
In looking more at this question, also, at 18, sometimes it's time to be pushed out of the nest a little bit. And it's a great time to experiment with things, even if you fail, because the stakes are low.
Yeah.
And because that's a time, a fantastic quote from one of our favorite books, The 4-Hour Work Week, was, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Really, what's the worst that could happen? And usually when you look at it, you go, well, when you're 18 and you want to do something, well, you might lose a little bit of money, or you might not get the job, or you might not. But it's actually a great time to try and fail, because the stakes are low.
And if your kid fails, that doesn't make you a failure.
Right.
People need to learn through failure. if you're not willing to fail and you're not willing to try, you're not really going to get anywhere. So go ahead and let him try, let him fail, encourage him to get back up again and to take risks and get out of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you know what they say, go big because you're still at home.
I think you just said that.
Yeah.
Have you heard that somewhere?
Well, it's
I
go
have
big
not
or
heard.
go home.
I know, but if you're still at home, you might as well go big because
Yeah.
you're at
Yeah.
home already.
You got a good landing place.
That's great. Cool. Mom, do you want to sign us off with the book that you guys are giving away?
All right. So thanks for listening. And if you listened this long, thank you for listening. And please share this with a friend. I'm sure there's a lot of people trying to raise boys to
Yeah.
be successful and they need inspiration and help. Sign up for our email newsletter and we're giving away a free book, an ebook that my daughter and I made full of tips, advice, and ideas that have been super helpful to me that I want to share with you.
Yeah. So just link in the description.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more of these kind of talks and ideas, hey, send us an email. Let us know.
Yeah, send us an email or in the comments below. Just throw down
Yeah.
some questions because we'll read them all. And if there's something that like we feel that we could bring value to you and the people watching, and we'll do that.
Watching and listening.
Watching and listening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you all.
Great to spend time
Thank
with
you
you.
very much.